Right, hello everyone, and it's a rather impromptu session that we're going to have this evening. I'm sitting alongside Loretta Cusack-Doyle, former world champion, and again former world champion, Neil Adams. Good evening to you, Neil.
Yep, good evening. And
I'm just going to say good evening to Loretta quickly.
Should have asked the ladies first. Good evening, Sheldon.
First mistake, but I'm sure there'll be plenty of others, but at least I didn't get slapped. Right, now I did break off from Neil, so let me find out what Neil had to say.
No, I'm just going to say it's great to be here. We are at the home of where it all began, and I remember having my last competition here was in 1979 at the Budokan Hall, and it's going to be a great atmosphere in here. I'm looking forward to it so much.
Loretta, very quickly, because Neil was talking about having fought here, but this is, like a mecca of judo, but they used to put the women somewhere else, didn't they?
Yes, they had the women's tournaments in Fukuoka, which has got some wonderful memories for me, where I won the first All Japan Championships for women. So it's got some nice memories, Japan. I think they celebrate judo so well, and it's going to be a very interesting but nice event.
Okay, that's a little bit of a background and history to the two people who I'm sandwiched in between, but now we're going to look at what's going to happen for the next few days. We'll start by taking a look at the under 48 kilo category, and given that it's close to your weight category, Loretta, let's have a little chat with you about some of the people that we should be looking for in the under 48 kilo category.
Well, we're obviously looking at the Ukraine Biladid there, who's the youngest ever senior world champion, and to hear she's going to be wanting to retain that title. She's got some tough opposition, there's no doubt about it, with Tanaki from Japan, who's never beaten Biladid at all, but has got an opportunity of home soil with this crowd behind her. Will she just make it the one that's going to be very, very special and memorable moment for her before the Olympic Games in Tokyo? So that'll be an interesting match for me.
Neil, your thoughts on Biladid or anyone else in that weight category who you think has got a shout?
Well, I think that, we're kind of writing it, aren't we, as a two-horse race. And I think it's because Biladid has come up, 17 years of age, nearly 18, when she became world champion. And I think that the fact that she beat Tanaki so convincingly the last three times that she's fought her. So 3 ippons against Tanaki, but Tanaki, as Loretta said, is on home soil. And I think she could make it very awkward. And we have seen Biladid, a little blip, just a couple of tournaments ago where she lost a match and it didn't quite go her way. And so, she started to throw a dummy out just a little bit. And so, we kind of, for the first time, saw a blip. But then she bounced back in great style, and I think that's a little bit of lack of immaturity, and I think that she still has to grow. And the fact that she's world champion now, going for a second world title, I can't see her being beaten because I just think that she's superior at the moment in the weight group. But I think the French might have something to say about that.
I mean, mentioned the French, it was Melanie Clement that defeated her the last time out.
She beat her well. She beat her tactically, and she did everything that she should have done to actually just spoil the party, And she kind of ruined it all. And like I say, Biladid didn't like that. And I think as long as she controls herself, keeps her cool, keeps calm, then I think that she'll be very difficult to beat.
Okay, we're not going to take a look at every weight category, but we will come back to the women. But we're going to take a look at one of the men's category, and it's the super lightweights there, the under 60 kilo category. Neil, who are we looking at in the under 60s?
Well, I think, we've got Nagayama and we've got Takato in it. Takato is the defending world champion. But Nagayama kind of gets the nod. I was talking to some of the Japanese, and they were going, Nagayama has the nod over to Kata when he's fighting on home ground. And so they can't actually meet. I thought, well, that will be interesting if they meet in the semi-final. Takato's kind of glad, I think, that they can only meet in the final. But I think that the possibility of an all-Japan final there, and I think if it is an all-Japan final, I think Nagayama could possibly ruin it, for Takato. And I think he would be the most difficult opponent for him. But we have, of course, the world number one, the Russian, and he's going to be there. He's got his own plan, and of course the Russians have their own plan. So he'll have something to say about that.
I wanted to ask Loretta something about that. The Russian, Neil's just mentioned the Russians, and they've got this history just recently of having won the Olympics in 2012 with Arsen Galstian, the Olympics in 2016 with Beslan Mudranov. I'm not saying that Robert Shvidabadze is in the same kind of area, but it could be that they're just getting the timing right here. What do you think?
Well, I think the Russians always produce very, very good results over the past, especially when it comes to major events. And Shivabadze is in the number one seeded position, so that will give that little bit of percentage, and we're working on percentages. That's a good start already. And but you can never write the Russians off, there's no doubt about it. But when you've got a field of 74 athletes, and over this year we have seen some great performances from a lot of athletes throughout the world. And so when it comes to a World Championship, there's going to be a lot of pressure on the Japanese to do well and exceed expectations. But I think there'll be a couple of big surprises coming out of this weight category as well.
Okay, let's go to the under 52 kilo category, and now we are with your weight category, Loretta. What about this one? What are your picks here?
Well, definitely Abby.
Is it not your weight category any longer?
Well, close to it. I can wish. I've matured well, as you could say. Well, for me, everybody's talking about Uta Abe. She's got to be the big favourite. She comes in as the number 2 seed to Bouchard of France. And we can't, again, the French are very strong, and as we know in history, have done extremely well in this weight category and throughout the women's weight category. So you can never write off the French team altogether. But home soil, the way that Abe has been competing over the years, she's got so much, for such a young athlete, she's got so much physical and mental maturity in her approach to these events. So for me, she's got to be the hot favourite.
Right, now, it's a funny thing, it hasn't quite worked out for the Japanese here, because you've got Amandine Bouchard, the number 1 seed, in the top half of the draw, but both the Japanese are in the lower half of the draw. You've got Abe Uta and Shishimi Ai. Shishimi was herself a world champion. How's that going to work out for them?
Well, I think that whole half is very interesting. I mean, Bouchard must have looked at that and thought, oh, all her Christmases have come at once, because I think that you're right. Shishimi Ai could be the most difficult opponent, I think, for Kelmende and also for Abe. But I think that everybody's been waiting for this Abe and Kelmende matchup. It's never happened. It'll be the first time. I mean, I have my own views on it, and I just think that Kelmende is probably, it's a little bit like Agbegnanu and Turchinyak, and, the fact that they've had their matchups, and at one stage when it came to the Olympic Games, it was definitely it was Trissignac that became just ahead, and then Agbegnanu took over the reins. And I think that now definitely it's Abe that's gone out as for me the number 1 and as the favourite. But I think that I think that we could see a surprise. Something will happen in that half, and then I think on the other half, well, the French must be really laughing.
Right. I mean, the weight categories that we've already spoken about all hold up these matches and these various possibilities. And to be honest, every time you pick a weight category, you're finding these kinds of situations. Another one is the under 73 kilo category. Neil, we'll go with you for this one. Where can we start?
Well, I mean, I was looking at that, and I was watching people's faces, with the under 73s, and of course you've got Ono there that isn't in the top rankings because he's only done a few events. So he took a year and a half out of competition, and so he was his world rankings are fairly low, but he's quite clearly, I mean, when he made his kind of comebacks, he was quite clearly still the main man. He's the main man, and everybody wants to see him. So everybody was waiting to see where we had all the seeds pulled out, and then of course Ono was coming in as an outsider. And so he could have landed anywhere, you know. We're just all waiting to see where exactly he landed. But wherever he lands, he's just going to be the clear number one for me. And just the fact that the Japanese, who have so much depth, I mean, don't forget, they've left Ebenuma. They've got the defending world champion, or he would be if he was in it, but they put him in the team event. You know, so they've such depth in the under 73s, and they've just opted for Ono because Ono beat them all in the Japanese trials, and so Ono is the one that they probably got as one of their main favourites in any of the categories.
Now, Azerbaijan have got two fighters in the weight category. Both are exciting and interesting in their own ways to watch. Can you see either of them, either Rustam Orozhov, who's at the top half of the draw, or Hidayet Hidarov in the lower half of the draw? Can you see either of those two really troubling Ono?
I think, you know, I mean, Orozhov has proved his worth from consistency because he is world ranked number one. And so, you know, consistently he's been there all the time. But Hyderov, for me, is the one that can upset. He can go in there and he can upset the apple cart, that guy. And even with Orozhov, you know, doesn't get on with him either, you know. I'm not saying personally. I'm just saying, you know, as far as the judo's concerned. So I think if anybody's going to cause a real upset, it'll be Hyderov.
Neil mentioned Clarice Egbegninu in the under 63 kilo category. There must be other people to trouble her. Who would those people be, Loretta?
Oh, there's going to be 6'3" Tershiniak. Tina Tershiniak, for me, is always an outstanding athlete. She's a consistent player throughout the year and for the past couple of years, and she'll be on that podium. I really do believe that. She'll have some battles, as she always does, to get onto that podium, but with the experience and the confidence that oozes out of her, then I can't see past her. But looking at the draw, you've got obviously 46 athletes there, and it's going to be difficult. It's going to be throwing them all into the mix and seeing what comes out of what's going to happen. And obviously we've put a Begnion that says the number one seed. She's very, very strong, and for a long time there's never been really anybody that's got that close of getting past her, as what I would say. But there's a few British athletes as well. Lucy Renshaw is one of these athletes she's a feisty little athlete. She can come out fighting. Technically she's not as strong, but with so much heart and so much spirit, with like a lot of these athletes, anything can happen in this field. Anything can happen. So it'll be interesting to see how they do get on. I'm just trying to see what we have here. We've got Trados of Germany, another young German that's come through. She's had a great performance throughout the year, and it'd be interesting to see how she performs. So for me, I leave it open, other than saying the number one seed has been untouchable. Other places on that podium, I think it could be quite a few surprises.
Okay, that will all unfold over the next few days. We've got a couple more weight categories to look at. The under 81 kilo category. Again, where do you start with this one?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because, I was watching Nagase at the last couple of events that he's been at. They had Nagase out there. Now, he was a former world champion, and he went off the boil for a year or a couple of years, actually. And then now he's come back, and he had two amazing matches with Valois Fortier in both the finals, and threw him for Ippon on both occasions. Valois Fortier coming back after injury as well, and doing really, really well in both of those tournaments. So they were two great matches, and I thought Nagase definitely down there. He was my favourite to win the World Championships, and he's not going. So they've opted for Fujiwara, and Fujiwara's going instead. Fujiwara apparently won the Japanese trials, and he gets the nod. But, which happens a lot, doesn't it? It happens all the time, actually. In Japanese trials, they'll have a Japanese trials, and the Olympic champion doesn't go, and the world champion doesn't necessarily go, but somebody else will go, to the major events, and they normally come out winners, so you can't knock it. But for me, I think Muki of Israel, probably one of the favourites, because he's one of the best technicians, one of the biggest throwers at the moment. Then you can't write off the current world champion either.
Right, maybe you want to say a word about the world champion there?
81 kilos for me is an exciting weight category, and we've got some really good athletes in there. It's one that I've watched quite closely. The Malay is a very strong athlete, there's no doubt about it. He's built like a tank, and that's how he fights, like a tank. But you have got some young athletes coming in. You've got Dominic Ressel of Germany, who won the Paris tournament, and you've also got Matthias Casse of Belgium. Again, two young athletes that have had some really good performances throughout this year. And again, there's ones to keep an eye out. I think they could put a few upsets in there.
No, they're actually good picks because it's the speed with which they develop. You know, some over just a couple of months are different from when you saw them the last time out. So it could be two nice picks there.
I think also the interesting that the Germans have a real history in the middleweight categories as well, and always very upsetting, and I mean very upsetting things can happen, you know, at major finals. And they seem to have a habit of doing it, and they produce world champions from nowhere. And I think you're right. I think absolutely, Loretta, that Ressel could be. I think I had him as an outsider to cause a few problems and upset the party.
I can think of three. I'm only going to mention two because in recent times, Alexander Witzacek, who then came back and won a bronze, which was a surprise for some people. They'd written him off as another one-off. And then a little bit, you know, further back, it was also here in Japan, but quite a long time ago, it was in Osaka, Florian Vanner. Don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, Florian Vanner, and I mean, nobody's, you know, kind of seen him since, you know, and they seem to do it. They produce these middleweights with, you know, that produce fantastic results. So, yeah, that's going to be a very interesting category, I think, 81 kilograms.
That was big of Neil to bring that up, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Right, moving on. Right, we've got the plus 100 kilo category that we've got to take a look at in the absence of the big man, Teddy Riner. Surely there must be a chance for someone else to shine and take it over here.
For me, I think that Tushishvili has just about started to pull away from the others. But, you know, saying that, I think that we've probably got two or three. We've got Hasakawa, of course, who's going to be on home ground. He's had a couple of really good. The last match he had there with Teddy Riner, when Teddy Riner was making his comeback, you know, he fought him really hard. He came out to fight, but also Krapelik. You know, Krapelik came out to fight as well. So he had two very hard matches with both of those. Of course, they're going to now. They realise he's not in it, so he's not in this tournament. They've got a chance of becoming world champion. I think they see that. You know, Tushishvili, we know he's beatable, but I do think that still for me, I think Tushishvili is the main man. And I think that he would have, you know, it would have posed a very interesting match against Teddy Riner, you know, a year and a half, nearly 2 years after the last time they met. If you remember the foot sweep where he nearly scored on him, it was very close. Everybody went, yes, was it? And it wasn't quite, but it was close. But it would be interesting to see him now, full of confidence, being the world champion and the defending world champion, you know, coming out and then fighting Teddy. But you know, and I'm defending Teddy Riner. You know, Teddy Riner has been the most amazing athlete. He really has, you know, and so often, not when people write him off, but when people go, oh, you know, can somebody beat him? He always pulls something out the bag, you know, and so, you know, I really believe, I really would like to think of him getting to the next Olympic Games and being able to defend his title.
Okay, Neil has mentioned there both Gurem Tushishvili and Lukas Krapelik of the Czech Republic. Those two, one of those two for you or someone else?
Harazawa, I think, has got to be.
Oh, sorry, you also mentioned Harazawa.
You did mention him as well, but I think with him, he's got, like we were talking earlier on, he's got to be building up a bit of confidence here. He's on home soil, and the one that can beat him is not here. And it'll be a lot of people that are quite disappointed not to see that Teddy Riner's not fighting. And one of one being me, it would have been interesting to see like we were talking about the number one seed, Tashvili, just that physical maturity and experience and exposure, being the world champion, the current world champion, coming across and coming up against Tidirina would have been very interesting indeed. But Kripalik, I thought as well, has since he's moved up into the plus 100 kilograms from his Olympic Games, he has started to settle in as a real contender in the plus 100s. At the beginning it was a big question mark whether it was one step too high, too much for him to then start dominating, but I think he's now nicely settling himself into this weight category and getting on that podium on a regular basis. So I think he's definitely somebody, and when he's got Niwaza that's phenomenal, so if he gets him down in the ground, his athletes are finished. So I'm looking forward to seeing the plus 100s, I really am.
I'll tell you who might be a little bit upset about missing out on this and this situation, and that's another Georgian, Gela Zelashvili, who defeated Harazawa in that final in Zagreb. It was a slightly bizarre situation where they'd given the result to Harazawa, then they cancelled that score, it started it again, and then he went back to beat him. So he must be sitting at home thinking, if only they'd picked me.
Well, I was on the front row there, deciding that wasn't a score, you know.
Best seat in the house.
It was, and well, it wasn't. You know, it was very close, but it wasn't quite a score, and it was on the front. So then, of course, it left it open, and anything can happen in that situation. And then, of course, when they tied up, and you thought, oh, something's going to happen, you know, and the old commentator in me comes out, and I thought, here we go, and up he went, you know. Great situation, but wow, you know, they've got the senior world champion and the junior world champion, the Georgians, you know, and they've got fairly good reserves as well. You know, it's amazing, you know, what they're doing. Just to point out as well that I think they've got at the moment 4 number ones in the world rankings in the men. 3 or 4. I can't. Yeah, it's amazing, really. They really are doing well as a team, and when they get a couple of really high-level competitive women, they're going to be a real force in this team match as well.
Well, the interesting thing is that Shvidabadze has got a Georgian name, although he's fighting for Russia. Nicolas Serajadashvili has got a Georgian name. He's fighting for Spain. You've got Lipatiliani in the under 100 kilo category. He's the number 1 seed. Guram Tusishvili is the number 1 seed in the plus 100. Everyone's got a Georgian on their team. You know, there's plenty of them out there. 7 days of international competition that we've got for you for the individuals, and then we've got an 8th day when we're going to have the mixed team event. I'm absolutely certain, guarantee that that's going to be plenty of action on that one. Our commentary team will be Neil Adams, Loretta Kusat-Doyle, and I'll be here alongside them as well. We look forward to your company beginning tomorrow. I'm just going to check with my chief at 10 o'clock. 11 o'clock, lovely, another hour in bed. 11 o'clock Tokyo time. We look forward to your company then. But from Neil Adams, Loretta Kusat-Doyle, bye-bye from here.